What's popping? What's popping? What's popping? Welcome to No Blankets Podcast, where we engage in raw, unfiltered discussions that leave no topic covered up, y'all. We rocking season 1, episode 7, entitled Leadership Accountability, Sacramento's Housing History. And yes, it's your girl and your host, C. West. Now, do your girl a favor. You know how we do. Migrate on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe and notification bell to get that alert when we go live at No Blankets Podcast. Shout out to my sponsors. You know who she is, my girl, my little sis, T Money of T Money Beats. She's the Wonder Woman on them ones and twos, always in the lab cooking up them dope beats for Sacramento. Go holla at your girl, T Money Beats. Shout out to the beautiful my sis, Miss Ely Chandler of Chandler and Company. They call her the Hat Lady. And she keeps our hair game fly with them fedora hats. She got some new lines, some new hats on deck. So go holler at her, please. She gets it in for both the men and women. Shout out to my undercover brother. You know that guy, Lance, the PI, retired police officer. He's that process service. So, you know, if you need to get them papers served or you need that 007 to catch a partner on the late night dipping out the telly, he's that guy. Shout out to the hardest working man, the Mr. Ronnie Cobb. He's the host of Cut to the Chase and Cut to the Chase, the Crown Edition, fellas. I'll have that information for you on tomorrow. Shout out to my man, 100 grand, the Dr. the Bishop, Kenneth L. Davis, and my cousin, his wife, Miss Rhonda Davis. Mr. Davis is responsible for my podcast design, commercial, and intros, and the dope social media flyer. So if you need that crispy look, take your podcast image to the next level, Dr. Davis is your man. And all the other sponsors' info, will be included in the comments below. Also, shout out to the late but never forgotten, the Bishop Sherwood Carthen, who said, and I quote, "Don't ever stop following a true legend, but make sure you identify what one is." I'm going to say that every time. Y'all better get a pen and paper out. That was a diamond right there. Recently, I took my dog for a walk. Everybody knows Dallas, right? In the neighborhood, it's called Oak Park. If you're from Sacramento, it's called the P, and I crossed over, Stockton Boulevard. I was going east. And it didn't take me long before I noticed that, the community just changed. The make and models of cars changed. People walking their dogs, parks in the middle of neighborhoods. I mean, it was landscape, elementary and middle schools, nail salons, pizza parlors, high-end grocery stores like Save Mart, Trader Joe's and Cordy Brothers. Man, I felt like, I went through a time portal. But I just literally crossed the street. And I wondered, man, how can a whole community change by just crossing the street? My first thought was, does the majority of residents being melanated have a different perspective of the value of ownership versus rental? But I remember having a conversation with the OG in a barbershop. It was a long time ago. And he was talking about actually race covenants and how in the early 1900s, the covenants controlled who could live on a property and who couldn't. Well, according to Jose Hernandez, an urban sociologist, this guy has his PhD from UCD and over 30 years in the real estate industry. He says it has a lot to do with racial divide and inequality. Allow me to read an excerpt from an interview with ABC published March 1st, 2022. Hernandez gave ABC 10 data to compare neighborhoods in the Census Tract 28 Oak Park to Census Tract 24 in Land Park. Now, in Land Park, the median household income is $141,000, and in Oak Park at the time, the median household income was only $44,000. In Land Park, nearly 70% of the people have a bachelor's degree or higher. But in Oak Park, it's 17% who have a bachelor's degree or higher. That's a significant difference, y'all. In Land Park, the median net worth is a little over 859,000, and in Oak Park, it's 20,000. Yeah. Race covenants controlled who live on a property. So, beginning in 1913, the National Association of Real Estate Boards instructed its members not to contribute to race mixing through property sales and provide their members with templates for race covenants to use in new home construction. This is an example of one dated in 1941. It states, neither the whole or any part of said premises shall be sold, rented, or leased to any person or persons not of the white or Caucasian race. For almost half a century, race covenants were written into property deeds. So, the question I want to know and the answer tonight, and maybe some others are thinking the same thing: are these practices still being practiced today? Well, tonight we have an exceptional guest who will help us navigate our way through some of the benefits of home ownership despite the history of the city. She has over a decade of experience and extremely passionate about being a real estate professional, and says she's devoted to guiding clients through one of life's biggest milestones. And you know what that is: buying or selling a home. During the mortgage crisis in 2008, she spent 2.5 years running a HUD approved nonprofit housing counseling agency where she counseled over 1,000 struggling homeowners across the country. I'm telling you, when you have purpose in you, nothing can hinder you, because she's had favor. I mean, favor to partner with the likes of state leaders like former California State Senator Karen Price and former California State Controller John Chang. That's where she signed as a powerful host of foreclosure prevention workshops statewide. Now focused on real estate sales full time, she draws on her background to help families achieve their dream of home ownership. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm blessed to share this space with Miss Pamela Campbell. How you doing tonight,
Thank
sis?
you. Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. I'm just excited. That intro just really made me look back on why I'm here,
Hmm.
and what my purpose is moving forward as well. So, thank you for having me tonight. I look forward to our conversation.
I'm glad. I'm glad you could spare some time, because I know you are a busy woman. Pam, so you and I were talking about these questions prior to the interview, prior to being on the podcast tonight, and I was telling you it's so many layers. It's so many layers to the topic. Sacramento's history of in housing, and I guess the question everybody would want to know, gleaning back or rewinding back to the information that was stated by Jose Hernandez, are we still in that place today? And before we go there, tell us a little bit about yourself, Pam, and why you chose real estate as a profession.
Well, I've been in Sacramento area for 20 years now. I can't believe I'm saying it, but 20 years. My background is really in medicine. I've been a medical in the medical field for 15 years prior to coming to Sacramento. And in all honesty, the money wasn't the same. The salary differential from the Bay Area to Sacramento was kind of like eye opening. So
Mm,
I didn't want to stay in that field, obviously, because with my household and what I was used to, I really wanted to do more, make more. So I've kind of fell into real estate. I fell into real estate working in the title companies, title and escrow as a sales rep, met a lot of people. And over that time, I was just encouraged, like, hey, why don't you, get your real estate license? So I got my real estate license just to have it, but then when I fell into the nonprofit area during the mortgage crisis, then it just really hit me that this had become a passion, seeing those distressed homeowners, people losing their homes, facing foreclosure and default. It really did a lot um, to them psychologically, emotionally. So it was just kind of during those 2 years that I decided that after that was over, I wanted to be a part of the rebuilding process. So then I just started doing real estate, selling real estate full time, and just, making it my goal to help people to overcome some of those obstacles, and some of the fear of being a homeowner. Because as we know, that's probably one of the biggest financial steps that most of us will ever take, is that kind of money to buy a home. So that's kind of how I got into real estate and where I am now.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. You talked about one of the hindrances of purchasing a home, and that was fear, right? So, do you have any icebreakers when you're in when you meet the client? Do you have any tools or icebreakers that you use with someone who is you can tell? I mean, did it take you long to realize that the couple or the single person buying this home was totally afraid, out of their out of their league?
Right. Most people do. Like first time home buyers was how I started. One of my specialties was dealing with first time home buyers. So they were excited, but that fear you could definitely tell. So you just kind of try to figure out the person, warm up to them, and then just let them know, you just have to take the first step. I always assured them that I would be with them right every step of the way. And I would not sell them any property that I wouldn't want to live in myself. So that's kind of a trust builder, because you can sell a house, show up, write the offer, but caring about the people enough to not just want to sell them a house for a commission, but wanting to build trust and confidence. So by them trusting in me and having confidence in me, built the confidence in the process, because it's
I
it's it's a pretty intense process.
I was going to say, for someone that isn't knowledgeable about purchasing a home, how
Mhm.
much extra time would you say that you would spend with that person to get them on a level of comfortability?
I would say I spend probably countless hours in person. Like when we're initially meeting, usually it was back then, when I first started, everything was face to face. It's kind of evolving now where it's a lot of computer, a lot of digital, a lot of technology. But before we would actually sit down face to face and have a conversation, I would have steps, guidelines, things that they needed to do. And I'm not a mortgage professional, so I would oftentimes have a list of trusted mortgage professionals so that they could go to someone to find out what their picture looked like, their finances, their debt, things that we look at just kind of broadly. But when you're purchasing a home, you have to dig deep into how much money do I make? How much money do I spend? How much home can I afford? Because we think about it this way, like I can afford a mortgage, but you also have to remember you still have your cost of living. You have to eat. You may have a car, insurance, all of the other things. That's all a part of the big picture. So just kind of step by step, walking them through that process could take a couple 2-3 visits before they're really more comfortable.
I always often ask leaders this question. Did you have a mentor, Pam, during this time? Was there someone that you looked up to or followed in their steps or aspired to be? Or is there someone yet still that you are aspiring to be in this real estate industry?
You know what? In the real estate industry, we got some big hitters in Sacramento area. Of course, you've got Zaretha, who was like the name that I heard before I even got into real estate. I knew about her, and then once I got to meet her and just kind of watch her grind and her hustle and her determination, I never thought I won't say I never thought I would be on her level, but she put in the work to get where she is now. So I always look up to her in the real estate market in Sacramento, just because she's been doing it and she's got a huge reputation. So I do look up to her in real estate. And there's some personal friends that I have just in life that I look up to, their motivation, their determination. And for me, things usually come easy, but real estate is a hustle. Real estate is
Hmm.
a grind. So oftentimes you get clients by referral, but then when that referral kind of dries up, you've gone through your family, you've gone through your friends,
Right.
you got to get out there. So just watching how some of my friends hustle and grind and keep going, they're kind of my role models. But in life, I think as we go through different stages, Michelle Obama is really someone that overall I look up to because she's always kept it real through her being a normal, wife, attorney, mother, person going through being a first lady. She's always remained true to herself. So I look up to her just like, man, sometimes you just want to quit. You want to just be like, oh, it's too much. But then I just look at her like through everything that we have not seen her go through, but we know it's been probably some stuff. She keeps her head up, and she's determined just to build up other people. And that's kind of what I aspire to be. It's just through whatever I've going through, I just want to make sure I kind of look to her, keep my head up and just keep it pushing for the next person.
That's great advice. Did the pandemic affect your commissions? And if so, how did you adjust to that, Pam? Speaking of things that we've overcome and keeping our head up through adversity. And again, I always like to quote my man, Tony Dungy, former NFL head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And he said, champions are birthed out of adversities, and so I always like to reflect on the pandemic for us here in Sacramento, basically from the things that I witnessed to people's everyday lives. How did that change for you in real estate, not being able to, have we evolved? Had you evolved, or has the industry evolved to where you were comfortable enough to do, like you said, Zoom interviews, or did it hurt you sometimes not to have that one-on-one contact that you would have, or that you used as a edge in selling a home?
Well, the pandemic definitely hurt commissions. I mean, I think all across the board for real estate professionals. Mortgage professionals, on the other hand, the interest rates were low, so they were booming like refinance loans and stuff. But the real estate transactions, the sales, working with sellers, working with buyers, changed substantially. The protocols for showing properties changed after the stay-at-home order. When we were finally able to go out and show homes, it was a rat race because you had low interest rates, you had 30 buyers to one property.
Mm.
So working with people who didn't have like 20 to 50, $60,000 over asking, you're not getting them in contract. So it could be really discouraging for our buyers. It could be discouraging for agents, for realtors, because we're working 10 times as hard as we're used to working. And we have to keep the confidence in our buyers so they wouldn't get discouraged. So that year and a half, 2 years was very tough. And we're not really out of it because since the pandemic, the market has not really leveled off. The interest rates are higher. So there's buyers, there's few sellers, but it's not, the money is more expensive. What you would pay now on a 7% interest rate versus then 2.5%, 3% interest rate, people can't afford it anymore. So most working adults trying to buy a home are kind of deterred because the affordability just isn't there right now.
I love that you said that, because it's kind of like a segue into the next question. You ready?
Okay.
You ready to get your shovel, get deep?
Okay. All right.
All right.
You sit up.
So, right. Well, what is the number one reason African Americans are behind the buying curve? Let's talk. I know. Like when I was telling everybody, if you just now coming, I was interviewing. I mean, doing the research for these interviews is, you have to have tough skin. You have to be able to, you're going to have a Sabbath rest where you just kind of meditate and dig into the place and focus on in spite of, but yet still tell the story. And sometimes that can get difficult for us. But Pam, I want you to at least tackle one of the issues that we're behind the buying curve.
Gosh, one is really hard. I mean, I won't say it's hard because I guess because there's just so many. And I think historically, we've been behind the curve on so many things that this big step into home ownership is just like climbing a mountain, you know, from fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of stepping off into home ownership, mortgage, and all of the things that come. um, I can't say fear is number one, but I'm just saying fear just encompasses so much because we've had the door closed, slammed, knocked down so many times that this big step of home ownership, getting a mortgage, and not wanting to settle for anything is really kind of just followed us generation to generation, where we're just afraid to take the step because it's a fear of failure, it's a fear of not being able to accomplish what we want, and to being turned down in the mortgage industry. It's just, I think, fear, and just historically knowing that we're two or three steps behind constantly and can't get out of that struggle is one of our, I won't say our worst enemy because that's not really the terminology, but just taking a step, getting the education, getting the information is very difficult when we've been let down so many times.
It's, the stories that I've heard about the lending portion of it, the lenders, the bankers. Is there, we've heard about the recent Navy Federal, um, and then we've heard about J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, right?
You know, is there a list of lenders or banks that are, or have you seen a particular lender or bank be more favorable towards African American lenders than not, or is it just
There's no
lenders
way to
already?
know until the news comes out, where you think it, but there's really no way to pinpoint, okay, well, they're not going to tell you I didn't get the loan because they have the, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, fair lending, where they cannot discriminate. But we know it still happens. We know
Right.
based on the news stories that we hear that the disproportionate amount of loan applicants of color were denied versus the non minority loans that were approved. They could be the same economic background, the same everything, but for whatever reason, they're not getting the amount of loans, they're not getting the dollar
Oh,
amount.
we know the reason, Pam. We
We know the reason.
we know the
They
reason.
want
Yeah.
based on the numbers. Who's
Right.
getting the loans? Who's getting what?
Well, Pam, do you work with lenders or brokers who are blind to race? Would you say that you know a few that are a little partial to the darker melanated people?
I do. I have to say that I do. Um, the circle of people that I work with, we try to be on the same mindset, because our goal is to help us to get out of that situation. And if we're partial just because of our history, if we're partial because of our kinship or whatever, and we want to work harder to get those people approved, to get them in a place where they qualify to be, where they deserve to be, where they want to be for equality, then that's my preference. But
Right.
of course, same thing. I can't say X loan officer or X whatever is anti, but we just know the ones to call when it's time to, dig deep and pull some magic tricks out to help push
Right.
those people over to the home ownership. And it's
Well,
all above board, but it's just It's that commonality.
The history of the covenant contracts is just not long ago, and now you have redlining and regentrification. And I guess when we talk about regentrification, um, Pam, there's levels to that, even, right?
Yes, there is.
So for me personally, when somebody brings up regentrification in the hood, all right, to me, it's saying that I'm going to come and bring value to this downtrodden neighborhood. And I'm for multicultural neighborhoods. I think it's good.
Mhm.
I think it's
Oh,
healthy. You
yes,
know,
absolutely.
um, I like mixed cultures. I like, as you can see, I ain't missed a meal, so I like to eat. So I grew up with Japanese friends, Filipino friends, Caucasian friends, Mexican friends, and we ate dinner at each other's homes, and ate of good cultural foods. But when you're talking about regentrification, to me, it's like, well, the property is not going to have any value until the Caucasians move in and they're walking their dogs, and they're having small ice cream parlors at the end of uh, is it because they, you know, they're going to come in, that particular people group, they're going to vote more, they're going to demand more of representatives? And if so, if what is the plan of regentrification in the mindset of our people? What do you think that they're doing that we can't do for ourselves?
Um, I think gentrification is definitely a mindset. As you mentioned, if a certain demographic comes into the urban areas to build it up because it's, obviously not what it should be. So they think if they, by coming in and bringing business and bringing, value to the properties, redoing the properties, remodeling, renovating, but it's good on one hand, but then on the other hand, it's displacing so many people who a, maybe have lived in those communities for a long time. B, can't afford to live anywhere else. So now it's making those neighborhoods that were typically neighborhoods, where lesser value, now they're becoming neighborhoods that we can't afford. And I'm
Right,
saying we just broadly. And then that leads to displaced, homeless, medical. So the layers go far beyond the real estate. The layers of gentrification, just the displacement, it's like stair steps. So they're taking away the homes, they're taking away opportunities because the restaurants that they're bringing in, they're not hiring the neighbors, they're not hiring the people who live there. They're hiring like kind, for the most part, people to come in to work the coffee shops, to work the boutiques and all of that. So it looks nice. But again, it's one other step pushing the people who live in the neighborhood, who've grown up in the neighborhood, out. Where, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to apply for this job. They're not going to hire them, likely.
right,
So it's just continuing pushing them farther. I mean, how much farther can they be pushed out with the gentrification? And then at some point, what's left? What's left for the people who've been there for generations? Where do they go?
right. And like you said, the inequality of lending for African Americans that are trying to open up certain businesses in certain places, and how that particular redlining can be. And
Mhm.
it seems like, when you go down Martin Luther King Boulevard, it's so diverse. Other than, certain, as certain Sacramento, certain blocks represent a lot of there, certain ethnicities. Like if you go down
Mhm.
Franklin, you just touch down in Little Mexico,
Right.
and that is said in love. That I don't want to get
Oh yeah,
booted
no.
off. And there's every kind of amazing restaurant. and boots and plumbing and automotive car sales. And one of the most important things that I think a neighborhood that reflects its ethnicity is a supermarket, right? So they have they have their supermarket, they have services and goods that's predominantly universal, but then they have that specialty that's served to their own race. And you have Stockton Boulevard, where you have a lot of the Asian
Right.
stores. And then what was perplexing to me is that we go down the Martin Luther King Boulevard, that a name denotes the nature of a thing, and you would think that we would have a black butcher, a real estate business, copier, sandwich shop, something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Besides, barbershops, Sacramento. Shout out to all the barbers in Sac, getting down, doing their thing. But I do other things to get my hair cut. Um, so it's kind of disheartening. But I think you sent me something,
I
a
did.
video. You want to talk about that a little bit, Pam? Because I
Yeah,
thought that was real interesting.
it's very interesting, and it's kind of eye-opening because you think about it, but you don't really think about it until you hear it, from someone else. And it had to do with why you don't see what was it, beauty supply, Asian beauty supply, um, and other race stores in areas that could be considered white or affluent areas,
Hmm.
because the banks, the lenders are not lending money to African American minorities or whatever to get these grocery stores or whatever other business other than in maybe their own neighborhoods. So they're putting more Asian beauty supply, hair salons, whatever else, markets, little groceries in the Black communities because they're not lending to Black people. They don't like, and then I had to take a look. I was like, man, I can't say that I've gone through a certain area that is probably more um, white American versus minority and seen a nail shop or hair shop or something that wasn't out of that race. So it did make me think that the lenders plant this money and these other groups in the urban areas, but we can't get a loan to get a business going in our same areas. And
Right.
I just made me realize, wow, that is really true. We can't get the money, the small business loan to get a business in our own community, yet someone else of a different race may be able to get those same loans in our communities to do business where we live. So just another setback.
And that's like I said, it's a lot of layers to this. It's a lot of layers to the whys, and and we're just dealing with Sacramento,
Right. One
right?
small piece of the country.
Exactly. So in all actuality, anytime um someone comes into a predominantly African American community, um to set up, goods and services, then that means that the African American dollar is being spent with somebody else that's not being generated back into the black community,
Right.
right? So that dollar stops at that restaurant, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't get circled back until or unless that particular business is employing African Americans, right?
Right.
There was a Asian restaurant on Martin Luther King, and I was like, so you're going to set up in the hood, but you're not going to employ no one from the hood? And I guess it must have hit a nerve. Some little Asian boy must have grew up in the P, because next time I went back in there, sis, they had uh a little guy back there, and he was doing his thing. I don't know if they let him cook any of the Chinese food, but
Right.
he had an apron on. Tell me, Pam, when you looking for properties for African Americans, how do you get around redlining?
I can say, fortunately, I have not experienced that I'm aware of any issues with redlining in my personal history of working with buyers. Typically, and I have a diverse group of clients, but typically I haven't faced that, thankfully. So hoping that it's something that's not as predominant as I mean, we know it is, but I think I just haven't experienced it. So fortunately, thankfully, my biggest challenge has not been the redlining per se. It's mostly been just the amount of money that they can afford to purchase a home in the area that they want and not have to settle for something else. But yeah, unfortunately, personally, I don't have experience with that. Although we know it's still alive and well.
Mm. Have you heard it in any of the social circles that you?
Um, I have. I mean, I've heard it, and also just kind of going back to those covenants and restrictions that you were talking about. Oak Park still has them. All of these communities really still have those covenants and deed restrictions
Are
for
they in the
race.
commercial? Are they in the commercial
They're
buildings? Are they?
residential. They're
Wow.
residential because those CCNRs were put together years ago, like in the 40s, 50s, depending on the neighborhood, which said that in these areas they can't live there. So if you ever take the time, like, and I noticed that when I was selling a property in Oak Park, I was looking at the CCNRs and I was just taken aback, like, that's still in there, but they can't apparently take the language out. They just are not enforcing those um, covenants and restrictions that go in those communities, but a lot of them are still there.
What's the difference between the CCNRs and say HOAs?
So the CCNRs go with the land, the property. So it's conditions, covenants, and restrictions. So that's just saying that basically you have the right to use the land based on whatever those covenants are. Restrictions are included with that. What can't be, can't go in the front door, you can't go in the back door, you can't have overnight guest parking on the street. So those kind of things. HOAs are totally separate. So that's like a little subdivision which is managed separately. It's private. And so you pay the HOA association for just say maintenance of your yard, your pool, and they're really more strict because they're not really regulated. So your HOAs could be this much, and then they can impose fines. There's a lot of things that HOAs can do to you um, as a violation versus the CCNRs with the deed.
so depending on the income of a particular community, right?
Mm-hmm.
That particular community will invest in its education, water
Schools.
resources, electrical resources,
Mm-hmm.
schools, right? And so, okay, so I went to I recently visit and hang out with my cousins, the bishop and wifey, and they're out in Roseville.
Okay.
Bishop was just saying it's easier to work with a VA approved versus a secular loan. You got that right, Bishop.
Okay.
So I went out to Roseville, Pam, and it, it was like you just went into a whole nother
You could hear the music
city.
playing.
Yeah,
You
you
could hear,
know,
it's like going into
the
Nordstrom,
high
you hear the
school, it was
piano.
all right, it was all innovative. It had lakes and rivers and ponds and just people, couples pushing their baby on the strollers and their dogs barking. It was just like a whole nother world you just walked into. And the way that my cousin was explaining it to me, their taxes paid for it, you
Yeah.
know. So if you're in a different tax bracket, or you pay into
Yeah.
having a particular,
Like Melrose. Melrose
exactly.
is included with your property tax, which
Uh-huh.
could be a couple $100s a month up to, depending on the community that you're in and how new it is, the Melrose could be $300, $400, $500 a month on top of your property tax, which takes care of the parks, the streets, the street lights, the safety, the fire and police and all of that. So they're paying into it. There's some areas in Elk Grove that are paying into it as well. In the newer part of Laguna, they're paying pretty hefty CCNRs to um, not make their neighborhoods beautiful, but to keep it kind of a certain way. So a lot of times people don't want to pay another $500 a month for Melrose, are going to stay out of those areas only for affordability, if nothing else.
Right, right. I wish there was a way to leverage that in that concept. I wish there was a way to leverage that concept in the hood, even though, we might not, they not may not be able to pay, you know, $200 or $500 a month, but something towards uh, having something substantial that they could go to, whether it's a community center, a park, a library, even in some, the
Well,
transportation,
that's
you know.
our leaders, our city officials. I mean, I think they could take steps to maybe not tax the citizens, but there has to be a way for government money to kind of create safe spaces in the parks
Absolutely.
that are already there, clean them up, make them look beautiful, because there's beautiful parks, all around the city. Sacramento could be a beautiful place as a whole. Certain pockets, they just need some TLC. They need somebody to care and somebody to
Right.
step up and say, hey, this is what we're doing. So I always find that like if you own your car versus borrowing a car or renting a car, you're going to take care of it better if it's yours and you put your money into it, your sweat, your tears, your whatever, versus, oh, let me borrow your car or let me spend a couple $100 on a rent a car for a week.
Right.
You're going to dog it out,
Exactly.
and I think that's communities also, and it doesn't really have a reflection on the people per se. It's the mindset of
Right.
well, it's not mine, and then that just keeps growing. It's a domino effect. Well, they don't care, so we don't care, and then the city officials start to forget about it, not care, put it on the back burner, because there's so many places that can be. If they had just a little TLC, you would want to live there. You would want to, be like the gentrified areas of Oak Park. You go over a few more blocks, you can just see that the city's not giving that same love to, people behind, I don't know the streets, but just, certain people, certain streets in the neighborhood. Just, you can see, like you said, you go across, a couple blocks over, you can see the difference.
It was
And I think,
crazy.
yeah, I think if they just if the city officials put some more compassion and care into the community, I think the community would give some more care and compassion to their own neighborhoods as well.
That's good. That's good, Pam. Say you had 6 minutes to push the number one reason for purchasing a home. How would you start?
Oh man, I would say homeownership is a big step. The first step is um, wanting to, homeownership, buying a home is an investment. It's an investment for your future, for your children's future, and to get out of your comfort zone if you've not done it before. I would say just having the power that something is mine, something as big as a home, no matter if it's a big home, small home, condo, or whatever, you're paying rent. So now when you pay the home, you're paying yourself. You are putting that money and that time and that energy into yourself. You're not paying the landlord. You're not, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with renting. Some people don't want to ever own a home because of the added responsibility. But I would just say that you know, just the power, just the fact that you did it. And it's like I said earlier, it's a biggest step that most of us will make financially, just to overcome that and to, just leave a legacy. And homeownership has been something since the beginning of time for us, wanting that. I won't say achieving it, but wanting to attain it.
So I've heard rumors. Should you have? Is it still 10% of the down payment for first
So the
time?
down payment can be anywhere from 3 to 5% um, for an FHA backed loan to 20% for a conventional. And that's of your purchase price. 3.5%, I think, is like common for, most home buyers if they don't have the 20%. Um, you do have mortgage insurance, so that's going to add depending on the price of the home. If you have the 3.5% down payment, then the mortgage insurance is put on the property, and that's for the lender's protection. So if something happens, you go into default, mortgage insurance protects the lender only. But
Mm-hmm.
most people don't have 20%, so that works out just fine. There's down payment assistance programs, which is basically like grants. And depending on the and basically those grants are not necessarily needing to be repaid if you keep them for a certain amount of time. So there is money out there. If you don't have a stack of 20% down payment, there's help.
So, does the research? So would you advise first time buyers to know that going in, or is that part of the agent's responsibility to always
Yes.
provide every kind of option? I mean,
Well,
okay, so I guess that was going to take me into my next question, Pam. What is your greatest testimony and your hardest no? Like, if you had to say no, this is, have you ever been in the middle of a sale and you said to yourself, they're just not ready yet. They're just not ready. They're just not quite ready.
yes, yes, yes. And I just feel it. You just because you get to know your buyers, you get to know your sellers, and over a period of time, you just feel like they're family. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to tell them the hard no, like you're looking at properties. And so initially what we do is and I don't do it. My mortgage professional does it. They'll go over the budget and say this is the minimum and this is the maximum. So I always look at properties in either the middle or the minimum because I know going into it, like if you go to your maximum, you're going to be stressed. You're going to be forced to like make that mortgage payment. Some emergency comes up. It's just going to be too much. So I did have this couple, they were looking and they were just discouraged in their price range, what they could find, and they were just like, oh, we're just going to get, this house. So we put in the offer. They got the offer accepted. Home inspection came up, which I always say, if you're going to buy a home, get a termite inspection or a home inspection because it might look pretty. It might look whatever, but under the walls and the plumbing, the electrical things that we can't see with our naked eye, those inspections are going to pull out. Oh, this family wanted this property so bad. And the home inspection came back red flag, red flag. And they were just like, well, we're not going to worry about that. And blah, blah, blah. They were willing to take the risk. But, and, I always want to be respectful with the clients. Like they know some, but I know better. And
Right.
I'm saying that on a
Right.
professional level, but
Yeah.
then there's a level of you don't want to step on their toes and disrespect. So I just had to say, look, we can get you the house, but
But it's gonna
don't.
fall apart in 3 days. So
Yeah, but don't come to me and because there's risk, well, people get sue happy and they're like, well, you should have told us not to do it. So I just had to say, look, we can do it, but this is a flat out no for me, but you're going to sign it, you're going to pay it, but I have to tell you that I wouldn't. And they ended up thankfully not doing it because, they had to talk to family or whoever, but they had just gotten so discouraged and then it became kind of adversary, like I'm the bad guy now, but I'm
right.
like, look, you're going to thank me, you're going to hate me now, but you're going to thank me later.
Absolutely.
That was
Absolutely.
hard. That was really hard.
Because when you're renting, you can always call the landlord. But when
Listen,
you're buying,
when you're
ooh,
buying, and that's what I always say too, that comes to that budgeting. You want to have those couple months, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of just backup money, because now
sure.
it's on you. Something breaks, something goes
So that's
wrong.
good advice, Pam. Let's jab about that real quick.
Okay.
So you're when you're building that client up, are these the questions that you're or the advice that you're giving them to? Because I that was great. Like have at least I don't know 2 or 3 SMUDs, some PG&Es in there, just in case the car breaks down on top of your mortgage, uh, your car insurance. Just in case something happens. I think having something for a rainy day is imperative. I have to ask you this question before you
Mhm.
before you go, sis. This is the question that everybody is wondering. How big of a role does credit play in it? Because we have 350, 540, credit scores. But no, there's a lot of us out there that shout out to everybody that's working on that 750, 800 plus.
Yeah.
But how large does credit play in purchasing a home or being able to qualify?
So being able to qualify is one thing. You can qualify, like, I think mid 600s. You can
Okay.
qualify. However, there's a lot of things that come with the higher credit score. So the higher credit score, 700, 720, those get you the lower interest rate. So you can get qualified with a six something, but you're going to pay more for the money. So my advice for people working on their credit, which is great because we all start from somewhere, we go up, we go down. That's just a part of the credit cycle. But my thing is just knowing what your credit is. Find out so you can take the steps to work on fixing it. So the credit score is not necessarily a stigma on a bad thing. It's just going to cost you less. Just like anything else. You buy a car, the lower your credit rate, the higher your interest rate. The higher your credit score, the less you pay for the money. So my things, start with your credit score and just build it up so you have something to work on. Um, Keep your debt low. That's going to help your credit score based on your income. Don't make big purchases when you're going to get ready to buy a home. Don't, go buy a car, because now the lenders look at everything. They look at your whole picture, not just your income. They look at your debt to income ratio. So you might be making the big bank, but if you have a lot of debt, then that income doesn't really do a lot until that debt goes down.
So I'm sure they look out whatever outstanding loans you might have,
Yes.
evictions, late payments.
They
I'm
look
sure
at
all
all of
that
that.
plays.
Yep, they look at all of that. And even if people have, say, a bankruptcy or something like that, after a couple years, you're still, if everything else falls into place, that's not, a deal breaker. You got to get through a couple years, and then you're back on the road to home purchasing. So
Oh,
that's
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 good.
not,
That's good information to know
yep,
for
it's
somebody
not a
that
deal
didn't
breaker.
know. Pam Campbell, real estate agent, setting the streets on fire. All of her information uh, is going to be included in tonight's live stream in the comments section. So this is the part, Pam, where we play rapid fire and our audience gets to know just a little bit more about you. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm
This is
ready.
called rapid
Hey,
fire. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. We got to
keep it fun.
keep it R&B. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Vegas versus LA.
Vegas.
Vegas, LA, what?
Yes,
Okay, she's a
Vegas,
Vegas girl, y'all.
baby.
All the men out there, she's a Vegas lady. Um, Louis Vuitton versus Prada.
I'm an LV girl. I mean, I like Prada, but I love Louis.
Okay, all right. Beaches versus a river.
Definitely a beach. A beach, sand, some water, beach.
Okay, okay. Ribs versus chicken.
Chicken, chicken. Any kind of chicken.
Any kind of chick over
Fried,
ribs, really,
baked,
huh?
wings.
Okay, next time we have a barbecue, you better not be over by the rib section.
Okay, I mean, like, I'm gonna just get one rib.
E40 versus Too Short. You a big
Oh
girl.
no, come on now.
You where you drink at? You don't have to drink. Is it a stalemate? You can't decide.
You know what? I gotta give them. It's a tie. It's a
It's a
tie.
tie. All
It's
right,
a tie.
okay. Brunch versus dinner.
You know, I've been brunching lately. These last since I'm good for some brunch. I
They
won't
pulled
turn
a
down
whole.
dinner, but I do like brunch.
Brunch has been amazing. I mean, they're doing some hot things with
Yeah,
brunches
brunch.
now.
Yeah, don't sleep on brunch, y'all.
Okay, brunch is amazing. Okay, Hennessy versus champagne.
You know, that's okay. So my number, so my number one is going to be the champagne, and I might do a little henny topper, but I won't turn down a sidecar either. So
Okay, all right. You heard that, fellas. You're not gonna turn down that sidecar. All right. Erica Badu, Jill Scott.
oh, I got to give it to Erica Badu. She just has, yeah, she got that little.
They're strange, strange,
It's
strange, it's
that, yeah,
strange.
yes.
Porsche versus the Benz.
I'm a Porsche girl.
Porsche, okay. Versus Benz, huh? I can
Yeah,
see it. I can see
yeah.
it. I can see it. Uh, this one might get you in trouble. Soprano versus alto. Yeah, man. Look. You can look over in the choir section. You can be like, "There's my sisters," and then you're right there. There's my sisters. Oh, yeah. You're gonna be in trouble for this one.
Hello. Ooh.
Altos or the sopranos? What's it? What you doing,
I'm
Pam?
gonna have to go with my Sopranos.
You going with your sopranos? All you
Gotta go
altos out
with
there? I don't know. I don't know. And then they're gonna have a quartet alto and a quartet soprano sing off. Well,
We're gonna
you've
have a
heard it
sing off.
tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Special guest Pamela Campbell giving us that insight on the housing history in Sacramento, answering some of the tough questions. I'm going to make sure that I have her information in the comments section. If you guys are interested in any information about purchasing a home or buying a home, Pam Campbell is your girl. Pam, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you
You,
so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Like always, if you go into the space, make sure you are the amazing. You have heard it right here. No Blankets Podcast, and I'm out.